Welcome to Three Nice Things, the podcast that has decided we've been so mean to these movies, it's time to say three nice things. You can find more about this show and others like it at our network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Other shows on the network include Is It Classic, Does It Rock?, where we pick a band or artist and go through their discography album by album, track by track. There's Previously on X-Men, where we look back on X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more. Radio 64, Video Game Music Remix Radio, and 9021 Here We Go, a 90210 rewatch podcast. Share your thoughts on this and upcoming movies by following us on Facebook or Twitter at Nice Things Pod. Please rate, subscribe, and share this show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we are talking about the 1999 film Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I'm Eric Mickles, known online as duskvstweak, and with me is Kendra Mickles.
Hi!
Host of 9021
Here We Go.
And former co-host
Yeah.
of...
Well, once a co-host, always a co-host.
Christian Flincham.
Once upon a time, a co-host.
Yes. Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
You guys are back together.
We're back.
And you've already talked about...
We just got to see each other like a week ago. It was great.
What was the, what episode number was it on Nostalgia Me This that you guys you talked about the prequel trilogy?
I couldn't tell you what number.
Okay.
You
Kendra
should
came
have asked
prepared.
me to look that up before.
Yeah. The first prequel to the original Star Wars trilogy, Episode 1, was filmed on a budget of $115 million, which seems absolutely ridiculous to me.
In that's too much way?
That's too low. That's so low.
Too low. Okay.
But, I mean, it's the 90s. It's 1999, and, like, they filmed it. It's just very low.
Yeah.
When we talked about Avatar The Last Airbender, $155 million.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, upon release and subsequent re-releases, the movie has made more than $1 billion worldwide. At the time of its release in 1999, it was the third highest grossing movie in North America ever, behind Titanic and the first 1977 Star Wars movie.
That doesn't surprise me.
It was also the second highest grossing film worldwide, only behind Titanic.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How long had it been since we had Star Wars when this came out?
Isn't it 83 to 99?
So, a while.
Yeah.
So, people were ready.
A bit.
A bit.
Hey, at the time of recording, it has a critic score of 54% on Rotten Tomato and an audience score of 59%, actually making this one of the highest rated films we've had on this podcast. But as I say in the beginning, or as I say in our promo, these are movies that have a bad reputation. And Episode 1 has a pretty bad reputation, despite those scores.
Wrongly, I say.
Yeah, we brought on Kendra, everybody. We'll get into there.
Champion of episode 1.
Christian, you might be feeling a bit rusty since the last time you were on a podcast. In 1999, are you a Star Wars fan?
Oh, yes. Very much so. I've always been a Star Wars fan, always will be a Star Wars fan. I don't even remember the last, probably the first time, I had to have been around 7 years old, maybe, when I first saw Star Wars. It was early. That's all I remember. And I've been enamored ever since, basically. So I was geared up for this.
So 7. Oh, wait. You're Kendra's age.
Yeah.
So you didn't have too much of a wait either then. So it was like you were like a fresh Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Episode 1 was... It will always have a special place in my heart just because it was the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters.
Oh, yeah.
It's got that nostalgic kind of feeling because of just the feeling of anticipation that was around that movie.
Man.
I'm honestly surprised how high ratings are for that on Rotten Tomatoes.
they are pretty high considering the vitriol that comes with
50 is like a pretty high percentage.
Yeah. Almost 60%.
Yeah, you wouldn't think 60% would create the you ruined my childhood rhetoric. I don't know when I first watched Star Wars, though I feel like I was aware of it at a very young age because I remember watching like the Muppet Babies and they did a Star Wars episode. So I would have probably still have been too young to have watched the movie, but I, would have known of Star Wars. I think the first time I watched the full trilogy, I was probably like your age then, 7 or 8. I think I was 8 years old when I watched the first trilogy all the way through. Though I don't ever remember knowing Episode 1 was like coming. So, like, I think I saw a commercial. I was like, oh, there's a new Star Wars movie coming out. But that was, like, it. There was no... Like, as a kid, I wasn't looking at magazines and like, I can't wait! So I had, like, no anticipation. Just, like, an odd... Just I was curious about the movie. I remember talking to a friend in the playground about it and having him tell me every single thing that happened in the movie because I wasn't like enough. I wasn't into spoilers or anything. I was just like, so what else happens? Does anyone die? Who else dies? In 1999, I would still just be like, I like Return of the Jedi, but I wouldn't say I was like a huge Star Wars fan. Kendra?
I feel like I've been a Star Wars fan since pretty young. I remember the first time I saw A New Hope. It was on TV. And I probably said this in Nostalgia Me This, our episode, but I walked into the living room and Corbin was watching it, and my brother Corbin, and and I was like, "What is this?" He was like, "It's Star Wars," and my life was never the same for as long as I can remember.
So in '99, you're a Star Wars fan.
Yes.
Okay.
At 8 years old.
Oh my gosh. I was also young once. All right, summary of the movie. We're going to spoil episode 1, though maybe George Lucas already did.
Hey-o.
How do we even summarize this movie? Because as we'll read later on, even Lucas found the whole plot. I guess it's just, this movie takes place 40?
A long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Hey, if you're a huge Star Wars fan who knows all the facts about every single thing, you're not going to be happy with this podcast, so you might want to just like press pause or walk away for a while, because I don't have Wikipedia opened right now. Listen, this movie takes place decades before New Hope. Young Anakin is found. There's this trade embargo going on. The Trade Federation is blockading Naboo, which is I'm tired. You describe it, Kendra.
Wow, you got 2 seconds into the movie.
Go ahead.
So the Trade Federation isn't letting Naboo do stuff, and so they send the Jedi, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, to negotiate.
The Republic.
Yes, the Republic
The
does.
Senate.
And that doesn't go well. They end up having to fight their way out, and they end up on the planet of Naboo. They meet Jar Jar Binks. And eventually, a lot of stuff happens, but they get to
Tatooine.
The Queen. Then they try and escape the planet, and their ship is damaged, so they have to land
On Tatooine.
I don't think it's. Yes, it is Tatooine.
You don't think it's Tatooine?
No, I'm sorry, it is. And that's where they meet Anakin and pod racing.
Yeah.
And
then they go back.
And they take Anakin with them.
They go to Coruscant, which is the Senate planet, and things don't really work out, so they go back to Naboo to have a big 3-tier battle.
Yeah. They're going to free Naboo.
And then they defeat the Trade Federation and possibly some Sith, and they have peace at the end of the movie. And Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, dies, and Obi-Wan was like, I'll train this boy. You know what? If you haven't seen this movie and you don't want to watch it, just go listen to Weird Al's A Saga Begins, or and he'll just describe the whole thing.
Yes.
So, you know what? I was a big fan of that song in 99.
Yeah.
So, histories with this specific movie. Christian, again, you saw this movie in theaters then?
Yes, I did.
So
Saw it with my dad.
Okay. Just you and your dad?
Yep. Precious. Morgan wasn't a part of it. I don't know why. She was too young, I guess.
Maybe, yeah. And so you saw it in theaters in 99. Do you remember your reactions to it as a child in the theaters?
It was magical. Like, I was obsessed with episode 1.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much that year, I believe, like right after it came out, I had a birthday. So, of course, the only thing I got was, like, Star Wars toys. Because all that merch got released, like, right after that came out.
The pod racing game?
Oh, yeah, the pod racing game.
Yeah.
I had one of those, like, mini little, those, like, games where you move, like, a little character back and across, like, a pixelated screen.
Those old Tiger Electronics.
Yeah, I had one where you're Darth Maul and you have to, like, kill...
Oh my gosh.
Younglings?
Actually, I think you kill like Naboo people, like fighters.
Wow, okay.
Intense.
But so you're saying when you saw it as a kid, it was a great time and you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was honestly really inescapable for me. I felt like I mean, it was like I felt like I saw the trailer all the time. There was like so much merch and so much like kind of like hype around this one that it was just like I kind of like got really into the hype.
Okay.
But I didn't know anything. Like I was too young to really understand what it was
Pacing.
going to be or anything,
Uh-huh.
really. You know what I mean? Like, I had no expectations going into the movie.
Right.
It was like all 100% new to me.
Do you know when you began to sour on it?
Probably as an adult.
Okay. So you're saying,
I-
like, as a teen, you were like, episode 1's good. Shut up, everybody.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I had no gripes with the movie.
All right.
Like, I mean, I was a kid. I loved it for what it was.
Mhm.
You know, I had no like critical eye of
Right.
anything at that point. And like now I feel like the CGI really stands out
Oh, boy.
as being a lot worse than it did back
Mhm.
then.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But
You know, when I saw it for the first time, I was amazed. But, you
Mhm.
know, it's not, you know, looking back at it through the years, it's like, wow, this hasn't aged very well.
yeah. Yeah, CGI is like any other animation. Like, you remember it being, like, the most realistic thing, and then you rewatch it, and you're like, oh, Rockadoodle has bad animation.
Oh, yeah.
How dare you? How
Bringing
dare
it back to
you.
Nostalgia Me This. My dad took me and my siblings to see the movie, and I had a good time. And I remember thinking, like, I really liked it, and especially like the end where you know you've got those like three. You've got the Jedi fighting the Sith. You've got the big Gungan battle, and then you've got the big space battle. And as a kid, that was all I needed, just like constantly going back and forth at the end. I don't really remember loving it. It wasn't like, episode 1 has changed my life. Like in 99, I'm 13. By the time this movie was out on DVD or VH1, like I saw it in theaters and then I didn't really rewatch the movie for a long time. I don't even know if I rewatched it for episode 2. Episode 2 had a much more had a bigger effect on me and becoming like a Star Wars like fan than this movie did. I think in 99 and 2000, I was more being blown away by like The Matrix and X-Men. Like those were the movies that were like shaping me. And so as much as I liked Return of the Jedi and those movies as a kid, this one just was kind of like, it was just, you know, another movie. I remember those Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC commercials would be on all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Where the Colonel, the Pizza Hut girl, and the Taco Bell Chihuahua were like fighting the battle against the droids. And yeah, that was a time when you could get those three characters together.
You had the pod racing game, right?
For the 64.
Yeah, and Battle for Naboo.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That was a pretty fun game, too.
Yeah, instead of Rogue Squadron, there was Battle for Naboo on the
The
64.
pod racing game was hard, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I never beat it.
Kendra, in 99, you saw this movie in theaters?
I want to say yes.
What?
I mean, Corbin, I don't remember specifically going to the theater, but I know that Corbin and I loved it. And I mean, when we were over at Christian's house, that's all we did was talk about Star Wars.
Okay.
And I think Corbin was Obi-Wan Kenobi for that Halloween.
This Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, like with
the
braid.
rat tail.
Yep.
Yeah, we can call it a braid.
It is.
Yeah.
And
I knew plenty of kids that had...
The whole time we were
Brave.
watching, Eric and I rewatched it a couple nights ago, and the whole time we were watching it, I'm like, I had the coolest clock that had, it was, the top of it was the Naboo fighter, and it was like, it would move around. It was amazing. I loved it. So, yeah, I was pretty obsessed. I have more memories of the second movie, like, as far as being obsessed with it.
Yeah. Same.
But I know that I loved this one.
Yeah.
And I watched it a lot. I remember having it on VHS.
Yeah. Did you have the book for this one, or was that just
I
the
didn't
second
have
one?
the book
You
for
didn't
this
have the
one,
Terry
no.
Brooks one.
All this huge... They had a ton of, like, coloring books and, like,
Mhm.
puzzle books
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff.
Marketing was big. It was
Yeah,
everywhere.
I had most of those, I remember.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about some actors who dodged the bullet in terms of not being in this movie, though some of them wanted to be. Michael Jackson reportedly wanted the role of Jar Jar Binks, and he wanted to do it in prosthetics and makeup.
Oh my goodness.
And
That
George
would have
Lucas did
been
not want that to
so
happen.
weird.
According to Screen Rant, Benicio del Toro was cast as Darth Maul, but he left the project when he found out most of the character's dialogue was cut. And I mean, I think I read somewhere Darth Maul only has 6 minutes of screen time total. So,
That is crazy.
well, the dinosaurs only have 12 minutes in Jurassic Park.
That's-
So you spread it out. It's weird how our brain just remembers so much more of that.
Yeah.
Possibly, there's like no real confirmation of this, but Tupac Shakur was almost Mace Windu, but he was murdered in 1996.
That would have been interesting.
I don't know how real these are, but according to factual.com, Denzel Washington, Tom Hanks, Morgan Freeman, and Kurt Russell were considered for Qui-Gon Jinn. Yeah, I don't...
Tom Hanks.
This is according to factual.com, so, take it
That
as...
would have been a totally
America's
different
dad.
Yeah. And according to epicstream.com, whom I've never heard of until today, Hugh Jackman, Tim Roth, and Henry Connick Jr. were considered for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Harry Connick Jr.
Harry Connick Jr., yeah.
Huh.
So,
Harry Connick Jr.
apparently Ewan McGregor was picked out of 50 candidates.
Wow.
So.
Well, he's perfect. He's perfect in every way.
All right. So, in the 80s, George Lucas was burnt out with Star Wars after The Return of the Jedi, according to The Secret History of Star Wars by Michael Kaminsky, and he stopped planning a sequel trilogy. So that would be the episodes 7 through 9. However, the success of the Dark Horse comic books line and the Timothy Zahn trilogy books, the Thrawn trilogy, showed Lucas that there was still a market for Star Wars movies. The Secret History of Star Wars says Lucas began work on the prequel trilogy in 1993. And I've read many places that the effects in Jurassic Park were the thing that proved to George Lucas that CGI had become viable and that he could now realize his vision for the prequel trilogy. So,
and so he did.
You owe your episode 1 to my T-Rex. Oh. Or I guess you can blame the T-Rex. It wasn't her fault. Ron Howard told Collider in 2015 that he, Robert Zemeckis, and Steven Spielberg were asked by Lucas to direct the film, since Lucas hadn't directed Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi. But they all turned him down, and Lucas eventually decided to direct the movie himself. You could also blame those 3. I'm pretty sure it was Steven Spielberg who was even just like, George, you should direct it! And George was like, well, all right, then that's what you want me to do. So, filming took place in 1997, and editing and effects took 2 years to finish. The reason why I put that down is because I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it kind of blows my mind to remember that this movie is a 90s movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird.
It just didn't come out in 99. It was filming in the late 90s. So that's because episode 2 and 3 feel very much of their time, very much like 2002 and 2005.
I do think of
3?
early 2000s
6?
when I think of this movie.
Yeah.
So.
But no, this movie is 90s.
But did it come out in December of 99?
No, it came out in May. This was a summer movie.
Well,
this movie played from the beginning of the summer to the end of the year, basically.
Wow.
So when Christian's talking about the CGI not holding up, that's because they're dealing with CGI from 97 to 99. The Mummy came out in 99. This movie's still working on that budget, Anyway, that just kind of shocks me to remember that episode 1, like The Matrix, is a 90s film.
That's crazy.
According to Time, the scene in which the toxic gas is released on Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn, it's the only scene with no digital alteration. The whole movie. In all 2 hours and 15. That's the only scene where there's no, skip it.
Oh my gosh.
So even the actors were edited with computer effects, with Lucas using different takes of different actors in one scene. So sometimes you have Qui-Gon Jinn from take 10 and Anakin from take 17 being CGI'd around each other. So,
wow.
Because Lucas just went full control.
See, that's pretty good. Because
goodness.
I couldn't tell that. Can you tell that?
I just think that leaves no room for actual acting.
Okay,
because
sure.
if Qui-Gon says oh, we'll never get out of here, and then Anakin reacts one way, and then you take out, it's too much. It's too much
I
control.
agree it's too much, but I couldn't tell that he did that, so.
The trailer for episode 1 created so much hype that people would buy movie tickets, see the trailer, and then leave before the movie started. So people would go see, Meet Joe Black.
Uh-huh.
And then they would see the trailer for episode 1, and then they would leave after the trailer and wouldn't stay for Meet Joe Black.
They just went to see the trailer.
They paid full admission for a movie to just watch the trailer. Because this is also 99 or 98.
Who wouldn't want to watch Meet Joe Black?
Have you seen it?
I've seen parts of it.
Okay. But yeah, this is late 90s. The internet is,
Oh, yeah.
In 2000,
I was like, why did they just watch it online?
In 2003, I would tell Apple Movies to start downloading the X-Men 2 trailer, and then I would go to school and hope that it was done downloading by the time I came home. So, yeah, this was the faster way to do it.
Oh, man. fan.
According to Rolling Stone magazine, some theaters grew wise to this, and they would show the trailer a second time after the movie you were seeing.
That is smart.
This part warms my heart. The main poster with the art, it was done by Drew Struzan, who, if you think of like the painted movie posters from the 80s, it's probably a Drew Struzan. The Back to the Future posters are Drew Struzan. The Goonies are Drew Struzan. If you're thinking that style of movie art, it's Drew Struzan.
We watched a documentary about it.
We did. Right? Struzan also did the art for the 97 re-releases of the films. Lucas dictated that Struzan's poster was the only art foreign markets could use, and it could not be modified in any way, according to StarWars.com.
It's a really cool poster.
The part that warms my heart about that is because Struzan, like, as computer effects and just putting actual actors on the posters became more popular, he kind of fell out of the way, so we've lost that. I don't know if either two of you have watched this, but the DVD for episode 1 has a featurette that shows the reactions of the first screening of of the first screening of this movie that was attended by Lucas and his cohorts. So Ben Burt, film editor, said, you can watch this and you can watch their reactions, and one of them is just sitting there with his hand over his mouth, and it's just like a silent screening.
In a good way?
I would not say this was a good silent screening. Nobody was like, yeah, Star Wars, bro! No, this was like, in the small screening theater, you hear Ben Burt, who's the film editor, say, in the space of 90 seconds, you go from lamenting the death of a hero to escape to slightly comedic with Jar Jar to Anakin returning. It's a lot in a very short time. And Lucas says, it boggles the mind. I have thought about this quite a bit, and the tricky part is you almost can't take any of these pieces out of it now, because each one takes you to the next place, and you can't jump because you don't know where you are. And so, like, that's in this theater, and then they cut to them in the kitchen. Two of them are just, like, in the kitchen talking about Star Wars, like, do you remember when you saw the first Star Wars? And it's not like a reminiscing, it's more like, this was not the same effect. And George Lucas comes in, and he says, I do a particular kind of movie of which this is consistent, but it is a very hard movie to follow. But at the same time, I have done it a little bit more extremely than I have done in the past. It's stylistically designed to be this way. You can't undo that, but we can diminish the effects of it. We can slow it down a little bit. So if it's intense for us, a regular person is going to go nuts. The scene is very awkward to watch, and it feels like Lucas is surrounded by a whole lot of yes men. So
here's the thing. I like the pacing of this movie. I like that it's like, oh, we're 10 minutes in and like 10 things have happened. Like you've gone from place to place. I don't know. Maybe I'm just like used to watching it. Yeah. But I like that it moved.
I don't really think the pacing actually bothers me. It's not the thing that stands out for me. It's the CGI, it's Anakin and all the awkward things that he says. You know, it's Jar Jar being annoying, stuff of that nature that is probably the things that stand out the most to me.
If somebody asked you, do you like or dislike episode 1? Now you would say...
I would say I like it.
Oh, twist for me. Jeez Louise.
I don't dislike it. I think the thing is like, I have such nostalgic ties to this that I don't think I could ever dislike it.
Okay. For me, episode 1 is the most inconsequential and unnecessary of the Star Wars films because it's so detached from episodes 2 and 3, where like 2 and 3 lead into each other very well, or you know, whatever. Episode 1, because it takes place like 15, 20 years before that, it not only does it feel detached from A New Hope, it feels detached from the other 2 prequels. This is my least favorite of the Star Wars movies.
That is crazy.
Sorry.
All the Star Wars movies
Star Wars movies.
Or just the main 6.
But I don't hate it. It's not a movie that I feel this like deep-seated anger with. I don't hate any of like the bad Star Wars movies. Hey everybody, Eric here, recording this at a later date. We just rewatched episode 2 as well. I think I have to say episode 2 might be the worst of the Star Wars films, and now I think episode 1 might be more watchable than episode 2. Anyway, back to the episode. Kendra, and you love it.
I love this
movie.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
This is like your 3rd favorite Star Wars movie.
I love it so much.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, Return of the Jedi is my favorite. and then A New Hope.
But
and
the
then
only
Episode
reason you like A New Hope more than this is because you feel like you can't put A New Hope below this one.
1. No,
Okay.
I love A New Hope.
Okay.
It's a great movie.
Okay. But I feel like you're worried if people
I think
find
this
out...
one is important. I think it's important to see everyone meeting,
Okay.
and then it leads us. So it's important because when you get to the third movie to look back on this movie, it's tragic because you look back and you see how things started. I mean, Jar Jar is stupid, but he doesn't make it unwatchable for me.
She was laughing at him. He would do stuff and she would laugh. Anyway.
Anakin's lines are pretty terrible. His yippies are really,
Yippee!
really bad.
Oh my God.
Again, it doesn't make
Now
it...
this is pod racing.
This is tense.
Yeah, that's my new favorite of his lines.
This is tense?
When he's
Whoa, this
driving
is tense.
the Naboo starfighter, and he's like, "This is tense."
All right. You know what? Normally I say it's time for our 3 nice things, but you guys are shocking me. So I'm going to say my nice things, and you guys will continue to say your nice things. I was not expecting this, at least from Christian. Kendra, I know, has issues.
Well, Eric, I will tell you
issues.
this. I mean, it is definitely ranked lower in my list
Then
than
Kendra's
several
then
movies.
Kendra's top 3.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Christian, why don't you start again? Guest in our home. Kendra and I live here.
So my first one is simply that Darth Maul is one of the coolest Sith Lord villains in the series.
I'm nodding my head a lot.
She's nodding her head in agreement. Yes. So
Coolest lightsaber, coolest. I think the reason he's so cool in a way is because he doesn't talk.
he did know. Yeah.
It
And
is.
there's like nothing to ruin his character.
Yeah.
All of it is just a battle, pretty much.
Yeah. He only has so many lines, and it's not Ray Park, the guy who plays him. It's a different voice.
Oh.
But I mean, his lines are like somewhat cool. They're like, "At last we will have revenge." He doesn't talk at all during that battle at the end of the movie.
And he just looks very brooding and angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
It
so
worked.
cool.
All of the George Lucas Star Wars movies, even though sometimes the villains don't deliver, they always look cool. Even General Grievous, when he's not talking, he has like a cool design. And when you saw like
Yeah.
those 4 lightsabers at once, you're like, oh, that's cool. And then like, the execution never totally lands on some of them. But like the villains, like if you just see a picture of all the Star Wars villains, like cool. But you're right, Maul stands out. And 6 minutes of screen time, you can't really bomb that.
Yeah. I didn't put that on my list, but it was that's one of my things about this movie that really makes it one of my favorites is that Darth Maul is such a cool villain.
Well, I mean, with 6 minutes and in one movie, and he never comes back in the other films, but people still know who Darth Maul is.
Yeah.
And they know what he's about. I guess, like, you just show up with that double-bladed lightsaber and
it's so cool.
Everybody remembers your name.
I love that they saved the double blades for the end, though, because he fights Qui-Gon Jinn with just the one.
And you think that's it.
And you think that's it. And
Yeah.
then it's the end, and there's 2.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That was in the comics first, though.
Oh, really?
In the Dark Horse comics. My first nice thing... Kendra thinks this was stupid, but I've decided to limit myself by not saying the ones that I think everybody thinks when they think episode 1. So when I'm saying the ones I'm saying, it's because I'm trying not to say the double-bladed lightsaber.
Okay.
And the standard cool things.
Well, you're just a step above, aren't you?
Okay.
Digging deep.
I guess about this movie and the prequel trilogy in general get a lot of crap because they deal with politics so much. But I think it was pretty smart to have the Senate scene having movable platforms, because then you can still have movement and some energy in those scenes because the platforms are moving around and spinning. And I think that was pretty smart, because if they just put it in like a Senate house with people just standing and standing up, if it looked like the Senate scenes in like Lincoln or something, then it would be even worse. But because they thought to make them floating and spacey, able to move back and forth and everything, I think visually it keeps your attention a little bit more than it could have with just a bunch of aliens sitting around like,
I commented about that when we were watching it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, the
floating disc,
seats.
yeah. And then it lays the seeds for the Emperor to just throw them around and
Yes.
show you the metaphor of destroying democracy by literally actually destroying democracy. So that's my first nice thing that doesn't have to do with lightsabers or other things. Kendra, your first nice thing. It's gonna
Okay.
be Jar Jar Binks.
No, it's not.
It's gonna be the Gungans.
That would never be
And then it's gonna be
in my
your
nice things
Jar Jar
list.
Padme fan fiction.
Okay. All right. My first nice thing, I really noticed this last time I was watching, but it's something that I've always liked. In all the Star Wars movies, but I like in this one especially the different sounds. And that don't laugh at me.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. Like, I like the sounds of the pod racing sounds are so iconic. I like the sounds of the starfighters. I like the sounds that the blue Gungan ball things make when they throw them. I just really noticed the sound effects and the sound engineering this last time we were watching it.
Boombas? Is that what they call them?
I don't know
It's
what
just-
they are. I don't know. But when they're bouncing around, they make like a fun noise.
Oh, the clunk, 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 clunk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I really noticed it this time, and I think a lot of the movies have iconic sounds.
Mhm.
Like if you hear if you're a Star Wars fan and you hear the
Ooh, challenge.
the pod sound,
Uh-huh.
like you know what that is, and
Uh-huh.
that's my first nice thing.
Okay.
Because I was trying to dig deep
Oh.
and not pick.
Sorry.
Do you agree?
Yeah, the sounds of the Star Wars movies, they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
I mean, a lot of it's been laid down by the other movies, but
Not pod racing sounds.
that's true. There was no pod racing in Empire Strikes Back, which is why it's your least favorite
Now
Star Wars
this
movie.
is pod racing.
Yeah. Maybe if Cloud City had some people gambling on pod racing. All right, Christian, what's your second nice thing?
So, kind of going on Kendra's point with this in the same way, in a way, I really like the ship, anything that has to do with the ships in this movie.
Oh, all the ships.
Because the ship, like, they basically created a whole new group of ships for this entire film. Like,
Yeah,
nothing
instead of the alphabet ships that had been through the other series.
So, I mean, I remember being, like, really enamored with the ships.
Mhm.
Like, I loved the Navy Starfighter.
Yes.
I
Those are
liked
so cool.
I liked the droids. I actually thought that later, I forget what they're called, but the fly in the space battle, the droid ships, whatever
Oh,
they're
yeah.
called.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not the controllers, but the fighters.
Right, yeah.
I didn't like how they like made their voices kind of cartoony
Especially
in the other two episodes.
Yeah, especially episode 3 when they're like, "Excuse you, I'll be here all week, everybody. I'm in Battle Droid 825."
But I thought that their original sounds in episode 1 were fine.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't hate them. I mean, I thought they were pretty,
Roger.
sounded just like a droid would sound without
Yeah.
being too cartoonish.
Over
I like
one.
the Queen starship.
Yeah.
It was shiny and sleek. I like the control battleships that were like the blockade.
Oh yeah, the ball and the circle around them.
Also, Darth Maul's ship is pretty sick, even though you only see it for like
Yeah,
2 seconds.
Yeah, you don't see it very long.
Still looks cool in there. Got a red light.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna hop on Christian's because my second nice thing is specifically the Naboo Starfighter,
Nice.
which I think is a slick piece of design. It's because episode 1 is more of like a prosperous age, whereas the episodes 4 through 6 are like dirty and broken down, and you're just using whatever you can get, and like all the starfighters look like they've been pieced together with wire and everything. The Naboo Starfighter looks just incredibly sleek and something that you'd have to have a lot of money to have. And I think also just making it just that like bright yellow and that shine really like adds something to when they're in space flying around. Naboo, I guess maybe like my second thing could just be like Naboo in general. Naboo has like a nice aesthetic, that kind of Renaissance, Romanesque look of the buildings, the waterfalls, the green grass. It's kind of like we hadn't seen anything like that beforehand in Star Wars up to that point. And, their starfighter and their ship, like you said, it's kind of part of that. Just this like, this is what you can have on a rich planet in a Star Wars universe that's not at war at the moment. So, but the Naboo one is always, because they even put it just right on the cover of that episode 1 Starfighter game you were talking about. So I think they knew. And it's just got that like pointy stingray tail. And then that little ball that kind of makes it look like a 1950s retro spaceship.
Agreed. It's not one of my nice things, but the
Is that the ship that was on your lamp?
Yes. Yeah. It was on my clock.
Your clock, right?
Yeah. It's a really, really cool ship.
Kendra, what's your second nice thing?
I'm gonna go with my second nice thing is just Padme as a character.
Gasp.
Yeah.
I agree.
Specifically, I mean, her costumes are amazing. This time when we were watching it, I don't know why, but I've always thought that Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman were switched for the whole movie. They switched back and forth the entire movie. Like, we would be watching it, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's Natalie Portman again. And then 2 seconds later, it'd be Keira Knightley. And I guess they dubbed Keira Knightley's voice over Natalie Portman.
They do some effects, yeah.
When she's being the queen. But I just think that was done so well. And, like, the casting of Natalie Portman and Keira Knightley, I mean, they look so similar.
I was reading some stuff about that, and apparently their moms would come to set, and when they were in costume, they couldn't tell the difference.
Well, it was funny because, like, I remember after the movie came out, like a year after, my mom would always be like, I'm getting these people confused. And then later I was like, oh, they play the same person in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I liked watching it this time and really paying attention to who was in the queen role, because they switched like so much more than I thought they did. And I just think that was cool. And like the first time I watched it, the reveal of like, no, I'm the queen, I think that's a really
all the
really
other handmaidens
cool
also
twist.
step up and like, no, I'm the queen.
So yes, I know it's the thing that people say is they like Padme in this movie, but I had to put it on my list. I mean, her outfits are just, they're just cool.
Maybe this isn't true, but I think it's sometimes easy to forget, like, the kind of effect that, like, that Queen Amidala, the main one, the big headpiece and the white makeup, the one that's on the poster, like, that was pretty iconic.
Yeah.
When this movie came out. Like, that was a big deal. It kind of, a lot of people thought the costume
I
was
wasn't,
so cool.
but so many kids were Padme for Halloween.
It has this, like, Japanese kabuki feel to it, and I think it just was, like, I don't know, everybody, you remember the Leia buns and everybody dressing up in her, Princess Leia's, like, episode 4 garb, but, like, the Padme outfit, it was a big deal. That was your second nice thing. Yeah. Christian, what's your last nice thing about episode 1?
Okay.
Though apparently I had to limit you, huh?
My last nice thing, I came up with these in like 3 seconds. When Kendra asked me to do the podcast, I was like, okay, here are my 3 nice things. The lightsaber battle at the end is arguably one of the best in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's on my list. Okay, I'm going to have to pick something different.
I mean, I guess the thing is like, at the time, there was only one that it was even comparable to in Star Wars, I felt like.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first Obi-Wan Vader fight is so, like, slow and methodical, and they're just kind of, like, smacking at each other.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi, it's like, that's the only thing you compare it to, right?
Yeah, that was the only fight that I would, as far as, like, excitement and, like, action, and I think the Duel of Fates was, like, such a good, like, background for this fight.
Yeah.
Like, it made it, that was such a intense song.
Yeah, that's like the standout of this one. I don't think John really like, that was the only track I think that, like, kind of blows me away in this one, considering it's John Williams. I think the rest is very much like, this is a starship, and Tweedledee, we're having fun.
Well, it's very iconic.
Yeah, but Duel of the Fates, I mean, they bring it back in all 3 movies.
Yeah.
Great.
And I mean, it's so, like, Duel of Fates was good in this one. Duel of Fates, when Anakin and Obi-Wan fight in the third one, I thought is the reason why there's so much, I don't know, I think that one's such a good scene, fight scene as well. It's just a good soundtrack for the fight.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's just iconic because of...
This feels a little like a cheat, Christian, because you already said Darth Maul, and now you're picking the only fight scene he has.
Yeah, I know. Darth Maul was, like, the reason I love this film, so...
Yeah.
The guy that was in it for 6 minutes is the reason that a lot of the reason why I was so into this movie.
On this rewatch specifically, I kind of am over that fight. I don't think it feels very short, and it feels like not too much really happens when you, like, it feels like it's just short and a little less impressive as, like, time goes on and the lightsaber battles have gotten more intense, after this. So I don't know. It made me sad on this rewatch.
What battle would you compare to this one as better?
The other ones that show up later?
Which
I
ones?
guess, I don't know. The
Yoda jumping around? Is that what you like?
I did like that a lot
prefer?
as a kid, yeah. The third movie's big lightsaber battles, and then the lightsaber battles in the the 7 and 8. I guess it's just one of those things where it's like, I would have always thought this was always going to do something for me, and then on this rewatch just a couple days ago, I'm like, why isn't this doing it for me anymore?
This was on my list. This was the...
Yeah, I figured this was on your list. This is on every...
Specifically after Qui-Gon is down, and it's just Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, that little section of the fight specifically, it's so well choreographed. It looks so cool. That whole fight, like, it gets my heart, my blood racing every time I watch it. Still, it gets me so pumped to like watch Obi-Wan because they're moving so fast. That choreography is just so good. You're crazy.
Sad, yeah,
you're crazy.
I guess for me, even like Episode 5, which was 20 years older or 30 years older than this movie, it just has so much more at stake. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to diminish this.
Qui-Gon had died, and Obi-Wan had to...
I'm not saying it's bad.
Fight
I'm just
a Sith
shocked.
Lord by himself.
Okay.
I'm going to narrow it down to that. I mean, the whole fight is amazing, but that ending part specifically with just Obi-Wan and Darth Maul is so cool. I love it. I'm going to poo-poo on whatever you say.
I know. I guess my last nice thing, and it was hard because I didn't want to say pod racing or the lightsaber battle or Duel of the Fates or anything. I'm going to just say Qui-Gon Jinn, which also feels kind of a...
That was the other thing on my list.
It's also kind of a cheat, but I feel like Ewan McGregor isn't really good in this movie.
I disagree with that.
But I think it's because he just doesn't have much to do in this movie, and I feel like with episodes 2 and 3, he basically carries those films as alone because he's like so fun and charming and just in it, and like he's the only one who could show like real emotion at times. But I feel like in this one, he's still playing it too young and a bit too... I don't know. He's both too old. He feels too old to be a Padawan, and at the same time too young to take a lead. It's a weird balance of 1997 Ewan McGregor.
I'm grimacing and shaking my head.
Anyway,
so...
But I don't think that version of Obi-Wan could carry Episode 1 the same way he does in the other films. And I don't think Qui-Gon carries the film the same way Obi-Wan does in the other ones. But there's Qui-Gon is just kind of like... He's funny in a lot of ways because he just does not give a crap about anything.
Yeah.
Like, he's constantly using the force mind control thing on people. He just doesn't care if, like, that's not what they want to do. He's like, you do want to give us all your money. You do want to give us a ship. And he just, it's funny because he does it to Greedo and it doesn't work. And it's like, and then he just doesn't know what to do. He's like, I'm usually used to just mind controlling people. Hey, everybody. Eric again. Later date. I said Greedo, I meant Watu. I'm sorry. Back to the episode. When the council's like, you can't train this boy, he's like, I will. I'm gonna. And
all right, but I'm gonna.
Yeah, and even at the beginning of the movie when Obi-Wan's like, I have a bad feeling about this, Qui-Gon's like, I don't feel anything. And it's almost like, is Qui-Gon like a bad Jedi?
You should read
Master and Apprentice. Yeah, Kendra really liked that book.
It really goes into their character and how Qui-Gon is really like he's a rebel. He doesn't follow the rules very often.
It's funny. I mean, I guess he was trained by Dooku, so maybe that's his thing.
Yeah.
It's just funny because like he's not sensing things when he should be. He's dismissing everybody else's opinions. But then also when he's fighting Darth Maul, the scene is it's kind of telling of both characters because they're trapped and separated from each other with those energy shields. And Darth Maul is kind of like walking back and forth like a tiger in a cage, just kind of like summing up his prey and just waiting. He can't wait for the thing because, dark side, you got to be filled by rage and it's all about energy. And Qui-Gon just sits and meditates for the whole time, which I think like, oh, that seems like a very Jedi thing to do. So he contains multitudes, is for certain.
I had Liam Neeson on my list as Qui-Gon. I just think he does a really good job. Yeah.
What else do you have on your list?
I think we said it all. We talked about the pacing. But yeah, that was it. That was what I had.
Jar Jar?
I mean, I could come up with more if I needed.
Well, you like the big battle too at the end where all three of them are happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Nobody said pod racing. I should have said it then.
Now
here I am, the idiot who said he likes how the Senate seats work, and nobody said pod racing.
The pod racing, that scene is really cool. And this last time when we were watching it, I like that there's no music throughout the race. Which
until like the
goes
very
back
end.
to my
Yeah.
sound effects. Like you're just hearing the different pods until the very, very end, and then the music comes in. And I think that was a really, really good choice.
They do that in Jurassic Park. There's no music during the T-Rex escape scene.
Okay, enough about Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah, this whole time
Pod racing is cool. We all know it's cool.
Well, I know that. I just expected one of you to say it. To say you
I guess it just seemed too obvious to... I mean, I like the pod racing thing.
I mean, it's cool because, like, they're just like these little seats being pulled by the... It has a very... It feels like the old chariot races from Ben-Hur and, like, those movies of, like, the 40s and 50s. These big chariot scenes where they're just battling against each other and they're being pulled. Instead of by horses, it's just these massive turbine engines. I feel like if you can afford a giant turbine engine for even one of those, then you could probably afford to not live in Tatooine. It seems like those things are
they
worth...
like the weather.
Plot hole. I mean, how does a slave save up to build a pod racer?
Yeah.
Yeah, true. I thought about that
like
this
9
time.
years old.
I was like, how are you building a droid and a pod racer? There's a lot of plot holes. When we were watching it and Obi-Wan was running, I was like, but you just ran so fast at the beginning of this movie.
That's true,
just run faster.
The Jedi speed run at the first beginning of the movie, and then they forget they can do that right after. I think this is something that like is probably more powerful when you watched it the first time, and then is diminished with viewings of episode 2, is that Anakin's mom isn't freed, and he has to go off without her. And that's sad. But then nobody goes back to free her.
It's crazy.
Not the Jedi, not his queen girlfriend, and never himself. He never is like, hey, I know I'm a Jedi in training. Can we go free my mom from slavery, though? So I'm not filled with emotions all the time? No. Can't do it. Sorry, pal. She's got to be a slave. And because then in episode 2, when he's like, she married somebody and she was happy, I'm like, well, don't, that shouldn't be making Anakin. He spent 9 years just being like, maybe tomorrow.
Is it the second one where he
he goes back and finds her dead?
That's the second one?
Yeah. You know what? It is his fault she's dead. Like, because don't they go to free his mom? Forget it. This isn't an episode 2 podcast.
It's crazy. You're right. It's crazy.
The scene works better. I guess what I'm trying to say, and a nice thing, is when Anakin is saying goodbye to his mom, it is sad.
I think it's
and
sad.
Lucas had the instinct. He originally planned on Anakin to be like 12 years old, and then he brought it down to 9 or 8 or however old Anakin is because he thought it would be more emotional to have a smaller kid like that to depart from his mom. And he's right. I wish he hadn't done it that way, but he's still right because that scene's still sad.
Yeah, it is, for sure.
But then it's just diminished when you think about all the years that take place before that and him ever going back.
Guess he didn't care that much.
Yeah. Okay, normally I ask if you're ever going to watch this movie again, because normally the movie's very bad and nobody likes it. But I guess I'm going to ask Christian, do you, to this day, watch episode 1 outside of like a marathon of the Star Wars film? Because obviously as a Star Wars fan, you're going to watch this movie again. But is there ever a time where you're just like, I'm just going to watch episode 1?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah. I'm probably surprising you a lot, but...
No, it's okay. 60%, 59%, you know? It's higher than we thought.
Yeah. Basically, any Star Wars movie but episode 2, The Last Jedi, I can watch.
All right.
Like
just
anytime.
watch episode 2, but like skip the gushy stuff.
I think
skip the first 140 minutes.
Yeah, episode 2 is just all the love stuff with him and Padme. I just like never got into that.
Well, it's not
so
good.
It's so bad.
I was so into it.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh,
and
this
then
is
you have
good.
like the freaking like, well, yeah, those whatever those like, they look like the blow up toads in Shrek. Like that's what they remind me of. The
Those
huge
little,
butt.
the
things
big
of
fart
steel.
cattle things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also,
Also,
episode 1, is this the first Star Wars movie to introduce a fart joke?
Yeah.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
about to say that.
What about you? Like, obviously, right? If you had a chance, like, oh, I'll just watch episode 1 tonight and like, if we only watched episode 1 now and didn't watch episode 2 tomorrow, you'd be like, that's fine.
Yep.
And then you would just watch again.
Yeah. Because I like it.
I
As a
would
movie.
never watch episode 1 without doing a Star Wars marathon now.
Well, that's sad for you.
I guess it's sad for me. Unlike, sometimes I won't even watch episode 4 and 6. I'll just put in Empire Strikes Back or Revenge of the Sith.
That's just crazy.
Or, I just think those... This isn't the podcast where we're doing those. But yeah, this one, unless I'm doing it, I'm never in the mood. Maybe it's because I'm like a little bit older, and so I got to watch The Matrix when it was fresh. So that was like blowing my mind when...
Enough about The Matrix!
Never! All right, well, that's as nice as I want you guys to be for the rest of this episode. Thank you guys, though, for watching episode 1 with me, though apparently it wasn't...
My pleasure.
Normally, like, people are mad at me because I made them watch something, and, you know...
This is a nice
you got, yeah, you got a little treat. We asked
like,
Christian...
ooh, I get to watch episode 1.
Yeah. Maybe I'll have to do a second one next time there's a Star Wars movie with people who really hate this film.
Well, I suggested Christian because I really didn't think you liked it as much, Christian. So I was wrong.
It's more about the nostalgia with it, I think, than the
Do you
actual
like that Darth Vader built C-3PO?
I mean, I just don't care. Like, some of the
That's
stuff
true.
in
That's
this
a good
movie,
self-defense.
it's just like, you're right. It's inconsequential to the story.
You just
like,
have
it's
to
kind
not
of
care.
like, it's basically like, okay, well, there's Anakin as a child.
Yeah.
All these other people don't really matter,
You want,
except for Obi-Wan.
if you really want to,
Padme matters.
if you really want to get into this,
Mace Windu.
if you want to feel like the stakes a little bit better, you should read Darth Plagueis first, and then watch episode 1. You should read some like the books around it so you can get what's happening
I highly
with the other
recommend
people.
Master and Apprentice that came out in 2019. Who
I
wrote
can't
it?
remember.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
Kendra, where can people find you right now?
People can find me on Twitter. I'm at MissMusicBox91, and I'm the co-host of 9021 Here We Go. It's a 90210 rewatch podcast. We just finished season 1. Spoiler, I'm liking the show.
Kendra's
so
never seen the show
I've
before.
never seen the show, and my co-host Nick has seen all of it. So we're going through and watching it again. If you're interested in mine and Christian's podcast, I believe, because what we did was we changed the name of the podcast to 902 and Here We Go. So if you look up that and then you scroll all the way back, you'll see our show Nostalgia Me This.
Like 40-something episodes. Of
we
Nostalgia Me
went
This.
through many nostalgic
That's
topics.
true. If you want to hear Christian and Kendra share their opinions on all the Star Wars movies.
Yeah, we went through all of them.
It's like it's their own trilogy. It's their own Star Wars trilogies of Star Wars podcasts. Now that's podcasting.
Yes.
All right, Christian, do you have anything you want to promote?
No,
Okay.
you can't find me anywhere.
Yeah, he's elusive. He's the real Phantom Menace.
I'm elsewhere, elusive.
From the movie.
So I found the episode numbers. It's 12, 13, and 14.
Nice.
There you go.
Oh, wow. That's earlier than I thought.
Yeah, I
it
know.
was.
Way earlier than I thought.
I'm duskvstweak everywhere online. Apart from other shows on the Radio Meanwhile Network, I'm the co-host of the podcast, The All the Book Show, and we did a whole bunch of Star Wars episodes throughout the years, so you can just find all those. We talked about our favorite books, the movies, all that. Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Join us in upcoming episodes as we say more nice things about bad movies that the other people won't like, Christian and Kendra.
You know, sometimes we like stuff.
That's true. You did kind of like Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, I did. I said I'd watch it again.
Oh my gosh. Again, you can find more about this show and others like it at the network's website, radiomeanwhile.com. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Nice Things Pod. Please rate, subscribe, and share the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. See you next episode.
See ya.
Do you want to say May the Force be with you?
May the Force be with you.
Did you do the Klingon thing?
Oh, I did.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't have to tell the listeners that.
All right. Sorry, everybody.
3 nice